There's a new phone number scam where scammers are hijacking phone numbers, intercepting your personal codes, and draining your bank accounts. And the phone carriers won't tell you this, but they can easily make one change to put a stop to this madness. This is absolutely mind-blowing. Did you know that with carriers like Verizon, some SIM swap attacks are actually inside jobs? And even when it's obvious the carrier is at fault, you can't even sue them. Also, they bury clauses deep in their terms of service to deny all responsibility. Yeah, it's that bad. And here's how it works. Scammers don't need your phone, they just need your number. Through a SIM swap scam, fraudsters convince your phone carrier to transfer your phone number to a SIM card that they control. Now, once they hijack your phone number, they're not just stopping you from making calls, they're breaking into your bank accounts too. In 2023 alone, victims have reported over $50 million in losses. The combination of weak security measures and increasingly sophisticated scams has created the perfect storm, and as digital banking and online transactions continue to rise, so does the risk for everyone. And picture waking up to a notification that your phone number has been deactivated, only to discover that scammers have taken control of it through a SIM swap. Minutes later, you find out your bank account has been drained completely, or your cryptocurrency wallet has been emptied. You turn to your phone carrier for answers. After all, they allowed the switch in the first place, and then you're met with their cold legal response. We are not responsible for your losses. If you've ever read the fine print of your carrier's terms of service, and let's be honest, most of us haven't, this might not come as a surprise to you, but it should. These agreements often include clauses that shift the financial responsibility of fraud directly onto you, the customer, even when carriers' own failure enabled the scam in the first place. And Verizon's terms of service explicitly limit their liability to direct damages only, meaning they won't pay you for consequential, indirect, or special damages. That includes the money stolen from your bank account or your cryptocurrency accounts after a SIM swap scam. Worse yet, they flat out deny responsibility for unauthorized access to your account, even if their own systems or employees fail to protect your data. Now let that sink in. Verizon can fail to secure your account, enabling fraud, and then wash their hands of the financial fallout. Your life savings could be wiped out. Your life response boiled down to, not our problem. And then AT&T's terms take it a step further, stating customers are responsible for all activity on their accounts, even unauthorized activity. They make it abundantly clear there is no security or protection guarantee against unauthorized access to your AT&T services. This essentially shifts the entire burden of fraud prevention onto you, the customer. And think about it. You pay AT&T every single month expecting reliable service and protection, but their own terms free them of any responsibility to secure your account. Whether it's a weak authentication process or human error on their end or an inside job, none of it matters. They're not taking any blame. And then T-Mobile's terms are strikingly similar to Verizon's. They state, to the extent permitted by law, you and we agree to limit claims for damages or other monetary relief against each other to direct and actual damages, regardless of the theory of liability. They go on to clarify that these disallowed damages include, but are not limited to, damages arising out of unauthorized access or changes to your account. Now, the translation to that? T-Mobile only covers direct and actual damages. If a scammer empties your bank account after a SIM swap, you're on your own. What's more, even when T-Mobile's own failures like poor employee training or outdated security protocols enable these scams, their terms try to shield themselves from accountability. Across Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, the story is the same. These companies create terms of service that prioritize their bottom line over your security. Victims of SIM swap scams are left with little to no legal recourse, even when the carriers fail to implement basic safeguards. For many victims, the financial fallout is really devastating. Bank accounts can be drained, life savings can be lost, and crypto holdings wiped out in minutes. With no accountability on the part of the carrier, victims are forced to bear the full burden of these losses, at least in theory. Now, we'll get into how this actually plays out in arbitration a little bit later. But carriers shouldn't be allowed to hide behind legal jargon and try to avoid responsibility for fraud caused by their own negligence. And you should know that carriers like Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile have a simple feature called a SIM lock or account pin that can block unauthorized SIM swaps. But here's the catch. It's not enabled by default. Instead, they expect you to do your own research and lock it yourself. Many people don't even know SIM locks exist. It's not something carriers advertise in bold letters when you sign up for your service. They'll gladly send you texts about new upgrades or discounts, but have you ever received a notification saying secure your account with a SIM lock to prevent fraud? Probably not. Without a SIM lock, scammers can contact your carrier, impersonate you, and then request a SIM swap to take over your phone number. From there, they can intercept your two-factor authentication codes, access your bank accounts, and then drain those accounts, and even lock you out of your email and social media accounts. For some of you, that might be even more scary. But for many victims, the first time they hear about SIM lock is after they've already been scammed. By then, it's too late. Their phone stops working and they quickly discover their accounts have been compromised. Imagine the frustration of learning that a simple feature could have prevented this, but no one told you about it. This isn't just an oversight, I think it's negligence. Carriers know SIM locks are effective at stopping fraud, yet they fail to aggressively communicate this option to their customers. Worse, by not enabling it by default, they leave millions of accounts unnecessarily vulnerable. This inaction shifts the entire burden of account security onto you, the consumer. Instead of carriers taking responsibility for protecting your account with aggressive measures, they essentially say, we gave you the tools, it's your fault for not using them. The truth is, most people don't take extra steps to secure their accounts unless they're prompted or required to do so. This isn't laziness, it's just human nature. We assume that if something is important to us, the company providing the service will handle it. And listen, default settings are powerful. They create a baseline of protection for everyone, even those who aren't tech savvy or don't understand the risks. Think about it. If SIM locks were enabled by default, scammers would immediately face a barrier when trying to initiate unauthorized SIM swaps. Customers who wanted to unlock their SIM for account changes could still do so, but the default would ensure that their account was secure until they actively chose otherwise. This single change could significantly reduce the number of SIM swap scams, saving customers untold financial losses and stress. Now, after thinking about it, I think carriers might argue that enabling SIM locks by default creates friction for users. They worry it might inconvenience customers who need to swap SIM cards or make account changes. But let's be honest, how often does the average person change their SIM card? Is a minor inconvenience really worth leaving millions of people exposed to fraud? The reality is that carriers prioritize user convenience over user security. And while that may seem reasonable in theory, it's a dangerous trade-off when the stakes are just this high. Moving on, when we think of SIM swap scams, we often picture shadowy hackers working tirelessly to crack systems. But the truth is far more troubling and closer to home. These scams are frequently enabled by insider fraud within major carriers like T-Mobile and Verizon, AT&T, where employees themselves or the systems that they access become the weak link in the chain. New reports have shown that scammers are actively contacting T-Mobile and Verizon employees and offering them $300 or more to perform a SIM swap. The employees, whether underpaid or simply unaware of the devastating consequences, accept the bribes. With just a few keystrokes, the scammers gain control of a victim's phone number and then start draining their accounts. Right now, scammers are deliberately targeting carrier employees, exploiting their access to internal tools to bypass security protocols. In some cases, scammers don't even approach employees directly. They're using leaked employee directories to find and contact their targets, making the scheme even more destructive. And faced with growing reports of insider fraud, carriers have responded, but it's not enough. T-Mobile acknowledges the problem, emphasizing that their systems haven't been breached. But while they investigate employees involved in illegal activity, victims are left wondering why better safeguards weren't already in place. The company has promised to enhance security by requiring customers to confirm SIM swaps via SMS or in-store visits. While this is a step in the right direction by acknowledging it, it doesn't address the root issue, employee access and training. And then Verizon has pledged to work with law enforcement and improve cybersecurity measures. However, systemic changes like reducing employee access to sensitive tools seem slow to arrive. And then the problem doesn't even end there with carrier employees. Authorized resellers or third-party retailers that handle customer accounts are also vulnerable to exploitation. Scammers have successfully targeted employees at these resellers with phishing schemes, tricking them into logging into fake portals with stolen credentials. Once they get those stolen credentials, scammers then gain full access to internal systems. Once inside, scammers use tools like Verizon's Omni customer support platform to execute unauthorized SIM swaps. These tools designed for legitimate account management become weapons in the hands of criminals. And authorized resellers often operate with weaker security protocols than carrier-owned stores, making them easy targets for scammers. Next, if someone stole your phone number and used it to drain your bank accounts or access other sensitive platforms, you expect to hold your carrier accountable. But here's the shocking truth. You can't sue them. Instead, they force you into arbitration. That's a process that feels more like a game rigged in favor of the carriers than a fair shot at justice. Most mobile carriers, including T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T, include mandatory arbitration clauses in their terms of service. These clauses state that if a dispute arises, like a SIM swap fraud, you must resolve it through arbitration rather than going to court. And there's a few issues people have with this arbitration thing. Arbitration stacks the deck against you. It's a private process, meaning it lacks the transparency of a courtroom. The arbitrator's decision is final, and appealing it is nearly impossible. Carriers are repeat players in arbitration, meaning they regularly work with arbitrators, creating potential bias in their favor. And it's time-consuming and emotionally draining too. Arbitration isn't a quick fix. Victims often survive months of waiting for a resolution, all while dealing with the emotional stress and financial losses. Imagine trying to recover from losing $250,000, yet being told, "We'll get to your case when we can." For many, the process drags on far too long. While some arbitration cases result in the carrier covering legal fees, victims often need to hire attorneys and experts up front, and those are additional expenses that not everyone can afford. Here's a few examples of how arbitration has worked in the past. A T-Mobile customer fell victim to a SIM swap scam and lost nearly $1 million. After enduring a drawn-out arbitration process, they were finally awarded $995,000, covering compensatory expenses. While this outcome may seem like a win, think about the months of stress, financial uncertainty, and legal wrangling the victim had to go through to win. In another case, a victim lost about $300,000 in crypto due to a SIM swap. Although the arbitrator awarded damages and attorney fees, the process required significant time and money and emotional effort to navigate. And here's the lesson. Even when victims win, it's a battle that many don't have the resources to fight. Now, I know it's scary to think that a scammer could take over your phone number and drain your bank accounts in just a few minutes. But here's the good news. You can protect yourself. Number one, you can enable SIM lock through your carrier. You can think of a SIM lock as a deadbolt for your phone number. Without it, scammers can call your carrier, impersonate you, and then walk away with access to your phone number. But when you enable a SIM lock or a number lock, you add an extra layer of security that makes unauthorized changes nearly impossible. What you can do is contact your phone carrier, whether it's T-Mobile, Verizon, or AT&T, or another provider, and ask them to activate a SIM lock or a number lock on your account. You can set up a PIN or passcode for your account too. This passcode will be required to make changes like transferring your phone number to a new SIM card. And some carriers let you manage these settings through their app or website, so you don't even have to make a call in some cases. And the second thing you want to do is switch to app-based two-factor authentication for your bank accounts. Most of us rely on two-factor authentication to secure our online accounts, but here's the thing, not all two-factor authentication is created equal. If you're using SMS-based 2FA, where a code is sent to your phone number, you could still be vulnerable to SIM swap scams. The problem with SMS-based 2FA is scammers who take over your phone number can intercept those one-time codes and use them to access your accounts. The better option is app-based 2FA. Apps like Google Authenticator or Authy provide a much safer alternative. So instead of relying on your phone number, these apps generate one-time codes directly on your device. To switch, all you have to do is log into your bank's website or app and navigate to the security settings. Then you want to select app-based authentication or an authenticator app. Now, even with app-based authentication, hackers are always coming up with new tricks like SIM swaps, data breaches, and account takeovers. Those are just a few ways that they try to sneak in. That's why I've stuck with Aura Identity Theft Protection for the past 2 years. It's the easiest way to stay ahead of scammers and keep my personal info safe. You get instant alerts the second someone tries to mess with your accounts. You get advanced monitoring that keeps tabs on your social security number, bank accounts, and passwords. You get data breach notifications so you can lock things down before hackers get access to anything. Plus, you really can't put a price on the peace of mind it gives you. And this is huge. Even if scammers hijack your phone number with a SIM swap, Aura's app-based alerts will still notify you. As long as you're connected to Wi-Fi, you'll know what's happening in real time so you can shut the fraud down before it spirals out of control. And here's what I think is the best part. You can try Aura risk-free for 14 days and see for yourself. Just hit the link below to get started for free. Oh, and by the way, I've created a completely free checklist for protecting yourself against identity theft like this. It doesn't just stop at freezing your credit with the big three bureaus like Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, because for a lot of people, that's not enough. It takes it a step further by uncovering the secret bureaus most people don't even know about, like ChexSystems, LexisNexis, and Innovis. These lesser-known agencies hold critical data that scammers love to exploit, so locking them down is a no-brainer. And inside here, you also find 10 easy step-by-step instructions with clickable links to secure your accounts and block SIM swap scams before they even start. You also learn how to protect your tax records with an IRS PIN and stop payday loans or unauthorized bank accounts from being opened in your name. With this checklist, you'll be able to secure every possible vulnerability and take back full control of your digital life. No hoops to jump through, just hit the link below one time to get instant access for free. But listen, let's face it, scams like this are showing up everywhere these days. In fact, I recently covered a shocking case where Chase Bank allowed more than 100 complete strangers to become unauthorized users on customers' credit cards without their knowledge. It's a wild story, but more importantly, I'll show you how to spot this kind of fraud before fake cards start arriving at your front door. Click on the next video here to learn the best way to protect yourself. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for watching.